Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Minnesota Rockstars podcast, and today we have a good one for you. There's been a lot of talk here in the state of Minnesota about the changes that Camp Ripley has made to the archery hunt, and there's been a lot of talk about it, and I figured there'd be no better way to get all the information out than bringing in Jake Kitzmann. He is the Natural Resource Manager at Camp Ripley to explain to us why the change, what we need to do to get signed up, the permits we need, where you can camp, all that good stuff. And he does a great job explaining all this information to us. So if you're an individual who has hunted Camp Ripley before or is looking forward to hunting Camp Ripley, this will be a great podcast for you. He does a great job explaining everything and just kind of clears things up for us because there's been a lot of misinformation out there that he kind of clears up for us. So with that, I know you guys are interested in this one, so we're going to get right to the podcast. I hope you enjoy it. Well, Jake, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it a lot. There's a lot of people out there wondering about this Camp Ripley hunt, and we're going to get to it right away. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. But first, I would like you to give everybody kind of an introduction of who you are and what you do for Camp Ripley.
So I'm Jake Kitzmann. I'm the Natural Resource Manager for Camp Ripley. I do a bunch of different stuff. We've got a 10-person office. I work for the Department of Military Affairs. We manage all the land out at camp, plus our Arden Hills facility down on the edge of the Twin Cities. But we kind of do a little bit of everything out there. We're basically the DNR in a microcosm. And I have a few different focuses. I run all the forestry programs out there. I should say I do planning for the forestry programs out there. We have a DNR forester that comes out and sets up all the timber sales. Of course, all the hunting that goes on out there, I do all the background planning and administration of that stuff. And then just grassland work, prescribed burning. I'm on our fire team out there. We do about 14,000 acres of prescribed fire a year. So anytime you're seeing smoke coming up in the distance around here in the springtime, it's probably us. So a lot of different things going on, very few true focuses out of my position, but the hunts and forestry and then our Sentinel landscape program takes up a lot of our time. I'm sure for you being local here, you've heard about the ACUB. The Sentinel landscape is just an extension of the Army compatibility use buffers. So
explain to people, because we got listeners throughout the entire U.S. We have some listeners that are out of the country. Explain to them what Camp Ripley is.
So Camp Ripley's a regional military training facility. We're a National Guard facility, state-owned, technically state-owned. The ground is state, the buildings are federal is kind of how it works. But we facilitate training for the Minnesota Guard, for a lot of other states around us too. We just had our XCTC training event going on out there. There was National Guard folks from all the way out in the Carolinas that came up. But we're a regional training facility, generally speaking. But we also then do train all the forces of the DoD, so Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force come out there to train, and some Canadian military. The unit, I can't remember the name of them, but they're out of International Falls. It's closer for them to drive down here and train than it is for them to get to their next closest Canadian facility. So
Sure.
We train some Canadians out there, but military training is really the reason I've got a job.
Okay. Good introduction. That was good. We're going to kind of jump into this hunt here now, okay? How many years have you participated over at Ripley with the archery hunt?
Well, as we all know, things have changed around there quite a bit with how the hunts have been administered over the years. My office has kind of been on the fringes of the public hunt since its inception. The guys that really started our program 30, 40 years ago we're working around that stuff and working with Bo Liddell, the area wildlife manager, to work on deer management out there and keep those hunts running. So we've been involved in different capacities since basically forever, that we've had kind of organized hunting out there. So just in the last few years, the administration of the hunts really transferred over to be just our office, Department of Military Affairs. DNR stepped back from the on-the-ground piece of it. They're, of course, still involved in the background, working permitting and helping out setting rules and surveys and that sort of stuff. And we work really closely with them on everything we do. But all the other programs out there, for those that don't know, beyond the public archery hunt, we also have several hunts for disabled vets, currently serving or retired vets, and then youth hunts as well for both deer and turkeys. So we're the complete point on those disabled vets and other vets hunts. And then now we've taken over the on-the-ground administration in the last 4 years or so, I believe it's been, for the public hunt.
Okay. For those of you that don't understand what we're talking about right now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the public archery hunt was the largest organized archery hunt in the world, is what I believe.
That's what I believe also. I've been told that for a long time. I know it was looked around. People took a look around in years past and were really trying to tell that to be the true story. And from everything I've heard from my predecessors, there was no evidence out there to say to the contrary.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going with.
I participated in it in quite a few years, way back in like early 2000s. And I did a decent amount of hunting out there, and I'll tell you what, there's 53,000 acres. A person can get turned around in a hurry out there if you don't know what the heck you're doing. But the one thing that's nice too is technology has come a long ways with your cell phone and whatnot and the mapping systems. But it's a huge property. It is so diverse. I never realized how diverse Camp Ripley is until I actually got in there. I mean, you have prairies, you have bluffs, you have wetlands. I mean, you name it. It is probably one of the most diverse areas in the state of Minnesota, I would say.
It really is. We lie at the convergence of two ecoregions in the state, the Hardwood Hills down to the south, and then the Laurentian mixed forest up to the north and east. So you can really see that transition as you go from south to north on the installation. It is big. A lot of folks, even locally, don't realize just how long it is, generally speaking. But from the time you see the tank on Highway 371, basically all the way to Brainerd, if you look west on the other side of the river, that's Camp Ripley. So there really is a big ecological transition that goes on there, and we try to manage it as a diverse resource. And that's one of the reasons why the military likes it. You know, I like to say that, well, I guess the joke is the military would like to have pop-up trees out there because they don't always like the trees. Sometimes they want them, sometimes they don't.
Sure.
We can't give them that as natural resource managers, but we can give them diversity. And so we try and manage our forests in a diverse way, and the grasslands and the different waterways out there too. So there's a lot going on, and it is a big place, 82 square miles. You can wander for a long time.
Would you mind explaining to everybody what the hunt used to look like and what it is transitioning to now?
So in reality, we're kind of transitioning back to what's old. You'd look 40 years back or beyond 40 years back, the installation was basically completely open to hunting.
Okay.
Way back. But in the last 40 years or so, it's transitioned to what was a two-day hunt. So 2 weekends were open to the public. And historically, there was a lot more buy-in. I'll say that. There was 5,000 hunters that would apply to this thing, and it would max out. But that's tapered off, along with hunting throughout the state. The archery hunting and just hunting in general has really started to drop off throughout the years here. And we've seen that in our permits, both on post and throughout the state. So as that transition was happening, we also had made the decision internally, along with DNR and then the military leadership, to transition away from the 2-weekend event and put it into just one three-day event, basically, and then just make that it really simplified a lot of things for a lot of folks going to that model. For those that don't know, the public archery hunt was the only thing that shut down all training on the installation. So when those hunters were out there, there was no military people running around downrange at all. So when you're trying to explain that to the military leadership, these people that really rely on this training resource that they've gotten is the core mission of Camp Ripley, when you're trying to explain to them that, hey, you can't train on this weekend because we got all these civilians coming out here, that is kind of a tough sell to these people. They need their training resources. The Minnesota National Guard is a very busy organization. We get deployed all over the place. I know things have ramped down with the global war on terror and all that for us. But there's still a lot of deployments happening, and a lot of people need to train constantly. So when you're telling people they can't come out and do their primary mission out there, it was a tough sell, and just logistically it was difficult to get done. So we transitioned into this 3-day event that has been the last 3 or 4 years now. And then there's always talk about, changes and how to make it better for people. And so just this last year, after the public hunt was done, we started talking about ways we could improve, ways we could make it more convenient for people to get out there, ways to make it safer, and just better track who's out there at a given time, and then also alleviate a lot of the safety concerns that came along with if you're not familiar with the camping situation that was out there, everybody's kind of off to the side in the dark, away from everybody else. There was people that would be parked out on Haven Road for days in advance, which we encouraged, of course, over time. You got to get people in there, but it is a safety concern. So this new system that we've tried to set up here, we're looking to eliminate some of those safety concerns and just go to and really, to me, it'll benefit the hunters in the long term. We're going to get over this hurdle of starting it up here the first couple of years, but you're going to get a better hunting opportunity out of it.
No doubt. You know, I'm looking at it from a standpoint that I'm obviously biased because I live about 5 miles from Camp Ripley. So obviously for me, you know, being this close, it's nice. Why don't you explain the process of how it's going to look this year now?
Yeah, so for this year, the big change is happening. One thing that's out there that I should get out in front of right away, early on in this process, I was saying to everybody we're going to be open the entirety of the state's archery season, and we had based that off of some assumptions that we were thinking it was going to be starting on the 15th of September. The reality is our hunt at Camp Ripley is going to be starting, or our hunting season on Camp Ripley. I keep saying hunt. I can't get away from just that one weekend mentality, but now it's a hunting season. So our season is going to be starting on the 15th of September. And then from the 15th of September until the end of the season, I believe it's December 31st, we'll be as open as we can possibly be to archery hunters throughout that season. So we are going to be closed for some certain times throughout the season. We still will be hosting our disabled vets deer hunting event. They can use slug guns for that one, but that's a disabled vets only hunt. So we'll be shutting down the installation to archery hunting for that period of time. There's also a youth-only archery event. The Minnesota State Archery Association, MDHA, they get together and they put on a youth-only archery event. We do intend to close down the installation for that and just allow the youth hunters out there. So if you do want to be involved in that, or you have kids that want to be involved just in a youth event, reach out to Jan and Roger Eckert, Minnesota State Archery Association. They run that whole event. There's information on the DNR website. And then also we have a muzzleloader hunt that takes place the Monday after Thanksgiving, and we're planning to be closed for that also. That's only for recently deployed vets. So other than that, barring any training activities that come up where we just can't have people out there, the installation will be open starting September 15th all the way till the end, and you'll be able to get out there and hunt. All you'll have to do is just get onto the Camp Ripley iSportsman webpage, register for that new account, give me a little bit of time. I say on there, allow 72 hours before you're looking to buy a permit, because I just need a little time. I'm an army of one approving accounts in the background. So just make sure you get on there a little bit in advance, get your account set up, and as soon as that's set up, you can purchase your permit. And then once the hunt opens on the 15th, you'll be able to see within your account, there's a check-in, or within the website, there's a check-in tab on there. And when the hunt opens up, that'll populate with the range areas that are open and closed to hunters. There'll be a table in there and a live map that you'll be able to see. And you'll be able to check into any areas that are green. So if it's green, it's open to you. If it's red, it's closed. And you'll be able to check in up to 150 hunters a day. We'll be allowing in. And then also within that 150 hunters, each of those areas, we call them training areas, but the hunters, you'll see them as hunt areas, really. Each of those areas will only be allowed to have 5 people in it at a given time. So some of these areas are really huge. You could be hunting 800 or 900 acres with just 5 people.
Sure.
So you'll have a lot of space to roam within some of them. Some of them are smaller, of course, but some of the areas are really going to be open to have a lot of room to roam for people. So other than that, you check in, check out. Or you can check out or check in, on the iSportsman website at 12:01 a.m. on the day you intend to hunt. You can hunt as many days as you want to, so there's no restrictions there. But on 12:01 a.m. on the day you intend to hunt, you can check in on that website. You don't even have to be at the installation to check in. That's been one of the concerns out of folks that I've been hearing again and again is, hey, I'm driving in from 5 hours away. How am I going to know I can even hunt? Mm-hmm. And I get that. This does definitely bias a little bit to the locals, the people that are right there. It limits some things for people, but that's the best window we can give. So 12:01, you can check in. If you're sitting at home, you can check in and then drive in from 3 hours away, get to the gate. Once you get to the gate, the main gate or the east gate outside of camp, You can come through the installation or in onto the installation. Just make sure you've got a driver's license or a valid state ID with you, and then your iSportsman permit. That way the guards at the gate, they know you have a reason to be there. That's within our rules that any civilians especially, they have to have some purpose to be on the installation. So the hunt is the purpose for them, so just make sure you got those two things when you come through the gate. And then you'll just head down to the range control office. That's right before you go down to the normal hunting area where hunters were released to go in the past. There's a brick building there on the left-hand side of the road. You'll just stop in there. You've got to grab a vehicle pass. It's a really simple process. Just go in. You'll have to write down some information on a board. You pull your vehicle pass out of the slot, throw it on your dashboard, and you're good to go hunting. At the end of the day, just repeat the process, turn in your pass, check out on iSportsman, and you're done for the day.
You said there's a permit. How much is that permit?
The permit that goes for sale on, or that is for sale now on iSportsman, it's $40, and that's good for the whole season.
Okay. And then along with that, so you said you can sign up at 12:01. Do you know immediately if you're in, or is there a little wait time?
Nope. You'll check in. It's pretty live time on the site.
Okay.
When it starts populating, and again, you won't be able to see this as soon as you buy your permit. It's not until the day that the hunt opens or the season opens that you'll be able to see this stuff. But yeah, it's real time. As soon as you check in, like that number is constantly running in there, and if there's green areas for you to hunt in, you can go. So just check in. As soon as that turns red, you can't go there, or if the whole installation's red, we're full. So,
okay. So a person signs up at 12:01, boom, they get access, they get a permit to go, or not a permit, but they get to go in. They're part of that 150.
Yep.
Can they show up at 12:02 and go through the gates and camp out, or how's that work?
Well, so that's something I really should get better clarity on from security. Historically, the answer would have been no, but now that we're allowing that campground to be open for the entire season, I have to assume we're going to be making some adjustments on that stuff. If it's a hunter with a permit, valid permit going into camp, that's a different story.
Sure.
So we're going to have to deal with some of that on the fly. So a little bit more to come. And we're working out these bugs internally still. There's questions we need to answer. So this is one of those.
Sure. And with anything, when you start something up, you're going to live and learn as you go and get those things figured out.
Yep.
Somebody mentioned, is there a fee for camping?
There is a fee for camping now. The camping situation is going to change from what hunters have seen in the past. So historically, we've all been over on East Motor Pool Road camping in the gravel there. That's going to change. That was one of the things driving this is the safety concerns around camping over there and just people kind of being off in the dark and just out of the way. We wanted to put it closer to the range gate for one, and two, just in a little more visible area, well lit, so there's a little fewer safety concerns. So the camping area now is going to be down more by the range control office where you go through the gate to go hunting. There's a grassland there on the west side of the road. We're going to have 72 or 74 campsites set up there with just signs out in the grass, so it's primitive camping. And you'll have to go through the range control, or not the range control office, the housing office on Camp Ripley to reserve a spot there.
Okay.
And that'll be $10 a night.
Okay.
There's no services at this spot. So no electricity, no water, no sewer, none of that stuff. You'll still have dumpsters and you'll still have latrines available to you there. But it's just going to be 72 spots. And once those spots are full, it's all first come, first serve. But once those spots are full, you won't be able to camp anymore unless you get housing on the installation in one of the normal building rooms, or if you're a service member or a vet or a guest of them, you can camp in the Deep Park Woods campground also.
Okay. How about the gate opening up for people to get through? Do you kind of have a set time on when that's going to be opening, and then when do people need to be out of camp?
Yep. So the range gate to go down range is going to open about 6 a.m., and then they need to be out by about 8 p.m. That's all based on range control hours is the reality. So they have their normal business hours, and early on in the season that might conflict with, early on in the season that might conflict a bit with sundown. But once you get later on into the season, you shouldn't have any conflicts there.
Sure.
And then just make sure so that 8 p.m. is your time out of the gate. You also need to be checked out on iSportsman by 9 p.m. So there's a two-step process there. So turn in your vehicle pass by 8 p.m., then check out on iSportsman by 9. We give you a little time because, that's realities. But if you don't check out on iSportsman in that time frame, you're going to be restricted from checking back in for 48 hours.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of check and balance there.
Yep.
So
that's good. If they harvest the deer, is it kind of the same registration process? Do they stop and register it? on the way out, or how's that going to work?
Yes and no. Mostly no.
Okay.
So what's going to happen is if you harvest a deer, you can register it. It'll be a 2-step registration process, like so many of the things here. So you'll go into iSportsman, and you'll be registering it basically with the installation. There'll be a button on there that asks you, did you harvest any game when you check out? And if you click yes, a registration page will pop up, and it'll ask you the normal questions about what you harvested. And then on that same pop-up, there's going to be a link to the DNR's website. There is a link to the DNR's registration website on there. So you'll have to go through and click that link and then go to the normal online registration page from the DNR. So it's kind of a 2-step thing. And that way it'll get you registered and legal. But then also we are going to be facilitating a little bit more of the check station that we've seen in the past. It's definitely going to look different than in the past. There won't be the huge lines going through. It won't be at that same location. But one of the big changes with the check station going away, the students at CLC, they've always done really well at it, being involved in that and working that check station. And that was really great hands-on experience for them. So we wanted to make sure that they still have got that experience. So we are going to be throughout the season. For this year, it's going to be 2 different times of the season. We're going to be setting up a check station right down by the new camping area.
Okay.
This year, it's going to be probably an Ice Castle Fish House sitting there with a sign out in front of it, but we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
So for this year, hunters can expect the traditional public hunt weekend, the last weekend in October. There will be a check station set up, and it'll just be a voluntary thing just for the students to gather biological data, weights, measurements, and those sorts of different things. We also, for this year, Minnesota Department of Health has reached out to us already to come out and pull ticks to test them for diseases. So we'll be facilitating that public archery hunt weekend, the last weekend in October. And then the other weekend is going to be those are weekdays, the muzzleloader hunt, which will be the 2nd through the 4th of December. But for the public archers, they won't be out there at that time. That'll just impact our muzzleloader hunters. So
I know there's a lot of other questions I'm sure people have, but those are kind of the main questions I have for the hunt. If anything comes up as we go along here that you can remember, or whatever you want to point out, feel free. I would kind of like to know, and I'm sure there's other people out there too, what was the driving force behind changing the hunt here?
Sure. Yeah, it was really logistics and safety. That was the big thing that drove a lot of this decision to change over to this new system. For anybody that's participated in the past, with all the hunters parked out along Haven Road, and there was just a lot of logistics outside the gate that went on with the state patrol having to be there to make sure everybody was safe, and just a lot of different things going on outside the gate. Then once you're starting to come through the gate, the big line, the traffic issues, and then just safety concerns over in the camping area. Though we haven't had a lot of issues with it over the years, we just want to make sure that everybody's safe and really try and mitigate what we can up front. So the safety and logistics, and then that training piece that I had mentioned earlier, this just alleviates any time of the year when Ripley has to be closed. So that kind of leads into one thing that I mentioned to people, or have mentioned to other people I've talked to about this, is that the safety concerns once hunters get downrange. So historically, as we've talked about, there was no training going on downrange at all when the public archers were there. Now that's going to change. So there will be live military training going on when the hunters are downrange. So
Sure.
if and there's a safety briefing that everybody will get online when they purchase their permits. But
Okay.
if you go beyond a gate now, there's been areas in the past that have just been closed to vehicle traffic and foot traffic only beyond a barrier, and that's been put on the barriers. But now, if a barrier is down, you need to know that there is stuff going on beyond that gate that can hurt you, it
Sure.
can kill you. So if a barrier is down and you see it down, don't walk around it, don't bike around it, don't go around it at all. There is military training going on behind it. So it's a really big safety concern that a number of folks have brought up. So I just really want to get it out there that if you see a barrier down or a sign that says do not enter, really, really take it seriously. There are things that go on Camp Ripley that can hurt you, that can kill you. We try and be as safe as we can, and it'll all be spelled out on the map that you will be able to see on the website once the hunt opens up there. But I just really want to reiterate that to people, that there's gunfire going on. The reason those areas beyond the gates are closed is because they're surface danger zones, we call them. that extend out beyond the range complexes there. And so people will be actively firing and actively doing real training out there when hunters are out there.
You mentioned the campsite's going to be moved to a different spot. Is that going to be closer to the fire department in case of a possible RV fire this year, maybe?
Well, we're just going to really hope that doesn't happen this year. But
were you there for that last year?
I know. I had gone home and I got the video as soon as I woke up, and my head just hit my hand and my heart sunk. It was just horrible to see. So it's a little bit closer to the fire department, but not a lot. So yeah, we're just really hoping that one-off was just a one-off, and no more to come on that.
I'm going to throw this out there. Obviously, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. Hunting numbers have gone down, overall throughout the state and probably throughout the U.S. as well. But, Camp Ripley was really a sought-out place for going to, not just harvest a deer, but a lot of people searched for, those trophy bucks, which there are some mega giants in there. And, as time went on, those numbers really started dwindling. Before, you had to apply, and it was a draw, and it was like Christmas morning when your name got drawn to go hunt Ripley. I mean, that made your entire year. And then going in there, I experienced seeing 64 deer in my morning sit, and just hearing the stories from other people too. We're seeing a lot of deer numbers. And then as time went on, me personally, I just saw deer numbers going down. I guess, what do the deer numbers look like right now? And do you think that was part of people not registering to go into Ripley in the previous years here?
Well, yeah, a lot of that initial decline did coincide with the population decline across the state. I mean, there was high harvest rates, and then we got whacked by a couple of really hard winters back to back in the mid-2000s, was it? 08 time frame?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that happened. And then it's rebounded or kind of trickled back up ever since. But I think, overall the deer numbers are strong, and especially after this last year. I know this last year there was a lot of talk around the state with harvest was down and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is there was a couple of pretty hard winters back to back there. Yep. So with this mild winter we had this last year, and with pretty low hunter numbers overall, I'm anticipating that this next year is going to be a busier year for hunters for sure. I mean, Camp Ripley does still have really good deer numbers out there. The big deer are definitely still there. I can attest to that. They're still there. So an interesting thing I saw in our data that we tracked locally is that even though, for about 10 years there, the numbers had been declining of hunters participating, but the overall harvest rate was the same. And the raw number had gone up for a number of years there. So that was kind of an interesting thing.
Sure.
But the last several years, it has trended down again, even though the percent of success rate did go up to its record number just 3 years ago, I believe it was.
Okay.
So the percent of success had maintained and then really bumped up and then started declining a little bit over the last couple of years with the declines across the state. So, the numbers ebb and flow. It wasn't a population management decision on changing over to this, but I do think it allows us some different flexibilities with how we run our hunts going to this, and a better ability to monitor our populations over time. One of the things that we view as a positive coming out of this is the fees that you all are going to be paying to hunt at Ripley. They stick with the installation, and we can use them directly for management on the installation. Historically, what people don't really know is that even though our natural resources program, we're funded quite well overall, but we don't get direct funding lines for recreation stuff out there. So our docks are in pretty rough shape for the soldiers and vets that can come out there and hunt. We can't fund a lot of game species survey work. We have non-game biologists out there that do a lot of non-game survey work, which is great. We have amazing data sets for it. But for game species, we don't have direct funding to fund that stuff, and aerial surveys modeling is very expensive to do. So we really anticipate being able to use some of this funding to benefit the hunters of camp in funding more specific aerial surveys on post this isn't going to happen next year. Don't get me wrong. We've got to get the money in the bank first, but we do intend to fund more survey work out there, and then better modeling too, specific to camp. The DNR's modeling setup is great, but it's set up to model on really wide scales. And so for a small place, small in the scheme of things, place like Camp Ripley, those models just weren't super applicable all the time, and it got, the certainty wasn't always there. So we're hoping that in the future we're going to be able to work with DNR and fund both more survey work and some more specific modeling to just camp. So we'll have to change some survey protocols there, and we'll work on that over time. But I really hope it'll benefit hunters, and we'll have a good handle on exactly what our population's doing, or at least as exact as possible what our population is doing from year to year.
Sure.
So we can really try and tailor our harvest a little better out there. And we'll be working hand in hand with DNR on that stuff, and just try and get a quality experience for people out there. I'm a hunter too. I want to see the big deer when I'm out there in the woods.
Yep.
And so,
and that's what's key, is when you get a person like yourself who's also a hunter, who understands the enjoyment people get out of harvesting, good deer and having a good quality hunt, just seeing deer, and that's the key. And going back to the money portion of it, I'm glad to hear that money's going to get kicked back in and help with natural resources inside of Camp Ripley. I was telling myself the other day, you have people who are spending over $1,000 before they even get to hunt Iowa. And I'm not joking. I mean, you could probably attest to this. Camp Ripley is a little miniature Iowa in my mind. The potential to be like that in my mind. When I was younger, talked to a lot of people. We honestly thought the next world record was going to come out of Camp Ripley. I mean, just mega giants. So that always, so this is just me talking, right? BS and sitting outside and thinking, I was like, man, I tell you what, if Camp Ripley could really take off and get back to what it used to be and maybe even better, I would have no problem paying $100 to get in there. I would. I mean, it's $900 less than Iowa, and you still have that same opportunity to shoot some mega giant deer, and let's be honest. I mean, nowadays that's what hunting is transitioning to. Yes, there's those still people that go out there and just enjoy deer camp, and that's fine. But there are a large amount of people nowadays that are out there looking for that big deer, and it's just one of those things that people are. There's people that are worked up about this transition. There's people that are happy about it. But I'll tell you what, when people get fired up, that means they care about that resource. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And a lot of people have shared a lot of good memories in this place. And I think everybody who is listening to this podcast right now who has ever hunted Camp Ripley knows that it's a hidden gem, out there, and it has extreme potential to do some really good things.
Well, and even just not from the trophy perspective, too. There's an awful lot of hunters out there that are looking to fill the freezer. That's been a big change, too, with Steve Ranella and all that stuff taking off.
Yep.
People that just really want natural food from the environment.
Yep.
And no matter what, you can get out there and you can do that. In central Minnesota, we've got such a great resource here for all that stuff. Just being able to fill the freezer and get, good game meat in the freezer, and there's a ton of opportunity for that. And there is still those big bucks on camp. I know the numbers, especially of hunters, have dropped off, but the deer numbers around post are still good. Sure. I will not sit here and say that they're as high per square mile as they were in the early 2000s. They're not.
Yep.
And to be frank, I don't want them to be there. For me, from a habitat management perspective and from a deer management perspective, when you get those lower numbers with good habitat, you're going to feed those deer better. Mm-hmm. They're going to have bigger racks. They're going to have bigger bodies. They're going to have more fat content in them.
Let me ask you this. What's your take on earn a buck?
Well, I think it can do good things. Well, depending on how you look at it, I shouldn't say good things. It can definitely change your age structure of your bucks, mm-hmm. right? We know this stuff, but I've had a lot of conversations about this with people from other game agencies, and I'm not from a game agency, by the way. I'm not a big game expert. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but the conversations I've had with people is that generally speaking, there are those people that really want that, and the people that want it, they really like that.
Sure.
And it can really increase your older age bucks in your population. But there's a lot of other people in the woods that really hate it.
Yep.
Just because it's a pain. At the end of the day, I want to stick a deer in the freezer, right?
Yeah.
So that's a tough one to balance. I don't know what to say on that. And for management at Ripley, we would really have to change a lot, statutorily speaking, for us to even be able to do that stuff. We're a state game refuge, the largest in the state. And so if you start talking about, hey, we're going to just manage for big bucks out here, that doesn't fit well with a game refuge status. The only reason we can have hunts on our installation is because we show a harvestable surplus, and we're there to manage the population and, control the population at a lower density.
Sure.
So that's the whole reason we can have hunts, and that's why we have this hunt at its basis.
Sure.
So, yeah, there's an ebb and flow there. But overall, with lower population numbers, we have excellent habitat out there, I believe, thanks to excellent forest management.
Yeah, right.
They're fed well, and the deer are doing good out there. I know, I hear it from a lot of people, well, I drove around and I didn't see X number of deer. And I commiserate with that. But they're not always out in the ditches either, right? They're out in the woods, they're eating, they're feeding on the forage that they have available to them. So I have a hard time with that argument.
Yeah, and you're out there more than we are. We show up 1 week in a year and tell you how it is.
Well, and even with the people that work out there every day, I hear the same stories, and the population isn't as high as it was back 15, 20 years ago. It's not. But I would argue that the population is healthier, and I can grow pine trees out there when the population's not as high.
And I tell you what, I don't know, me personally, pine trees are a huge factor when it comes to winter survival. I mean, just having a thermal cover, I've seen it on properties that I've hunted before and whatnot. And around here, I mean, it's a necessity. You need that. Are you guys going to have a quota at all? Like if they reach a quota, are we shutting it down, or is it wide open?
Not as of this year. So learning more as this goes along. We've definitely talked about it internally. So we're going to monitor. We'll be taking a look at what the harvest rate looks like. I do anticipate here in the next couple of years that the harvest rate's probably going to drop off. A lot of other installations run this iSportsman system, and every one of them we've talked to, they've said the same thing to us. Expect your numbers to drop off in the short term. But they'll build back. People just don't like transition, and I get it. I'm a creature of habit just the same as anybody. So we're anticipating that for at least a couple of years, we probably won't have to go into that, but if the time comes, we'll definitely take a look at it. Historically, for the last 10 years, I sat down and took a pretty close look at this. And over the last 10 years, between all of our hunts on the installation, we've harvested about 280 deer a year, basically. There's obviously fluctuation up and down on that stuff. And to me, that's a pretty good number. The population overall will still go up and down throughout the state, and our harvest level just follows right along with it. You can watch that happen all over the place. But if your harvest rate follows the population, you're doing pretty good. If your harvest rate just keeps going up and up and up while the population's declining, well, that's not really good.
What goes into figuring out the population, the surveys and whatnot? What all goes into that?
Right now, and historically, we've based it off of what the DNR surveys and modeling has done, and we just work closely with the local area wildlife office on that, and just try and make sure that we're pretty close in line to what they're doing. And especially this year, our permitting and the whole works is going to be right in line with Permit Area 248, just the same as all around camp.
Okay. How about other animal populations out there, predators such as bear, timber wolves, all that stuff? What do those numbers look like? Because when I'm sitting there, watching, the unofficial Camp Ripley Facebook page, there's bear running around everywhere. Has there ever been a thought of doing a bear hunt? I mean, what do those numbers look like right now?
So we've never done an official population level survey of our bear population. There's obviously a lot of them out there, and we track a lot of bears. We have long-standing, really excellent data sets on our bears out there. We've got, I believe it is 8 bears that are collared currently. We don't have any wolves collared, but that's another one we've never done a true population survey on. But historically, we always said there's kind of in the mid-teens or so of wolves out there in about 2 packs, sometimes 3, depending on how you looked at it. And that's kind of still the case. And the bear numbers across the state, they're increasing. Their range is expanding to the south and west. The bear biologists know this. And I mean, I get asked about it quite a bit, about having a hunt out there. And there's a few factors. One is the game refuge status, like I talked about, harvestable surplus. 2 is that scientific factor. We've just got great research that's gone on out there. We have multi-generational studies that have gone on where we've tracked the young of 3 or 4 generations of bears back to back to back to back. So, I mean, that's almost unheard of throughout the state. And so we've got that really excellent data set. And then there's the other piece where the reality of the mortality of our bears out there is that it's almost the same as everywhere else in the state, even though we don't have a hunt out there specifically for bears. But between vehicle kills on the highways around us, I was amazed at the number of bears that get hit by cars when I started out there.
Interesting.
But between that and then just the bears wandering off the installation, a lot of what people shoot over baits is younger males, and they move all over the place, right? So that happens. And we see really similar mortality rates of our bears on camp as they do off camp. And that's from data from state bear biologists. We work with them all the time on our bears, and so we've got pretty good data out there on that stuff. So I know that comes up a lot, but I don't foresee any of that coming here in the future. And of course, the wolves are always going to be there. I'm a fan of wolves. I know they are a hot button topic with deer, but to me, if you got a good wolf population, you got a good deer population because they need things to eat.
Exactly. Just down the road here, not last year, the year before, I filmed 8 wolves. Come right through, and it was something to see, that's for sure. But yeah, it's crazy. What are your biggest concerns going into this year with this hunt?
Sure, yeah. Well, one of them's already come and gone, and that was August 1st. All the permits were able to actually start selling, so that was a good step. But then, yeah, the check-in on the 15th, just making sure everybody can check in. I'm super apprehensive about it. Everything's worked great with the site so far. There's been a couple little hiccups here and there, and more about miscommunications on my part than anything. The site overall has worked really well, but just making sure everybody can get checked in on that day. That's really my biggest concern. And then the safety while they're downrange. I'll go back to that again and again. If an area is closed, don't go into it. There's things happening beyond it that will hurt you. So that safety piece is huge. And then, I mean, just for the most part, the public archers have always been great at following the rules for by and large, like so many hunters are. They're responsible. They're used to reading that regulations book, so they really do follow the rules. And I don't have a ton of concerns from that perspective, but just making sure they can get out there and have a good experience is really what I'm hoping for.
I guess lastly, just kind of hit on again where exactly they need to go to sign up. Just want to hit on this one more time. Where do they need to go to sign up? And maybe things they should prep for going into the season here.
Yep, so just Google up Camp Ripley iSportsman. I say Camp Ripley iSportsman. Don't just do iSportsman. A bunch of things will pop up if you do iSportsman. And we had a guy call in already that he bought a permit and he wasn't sure what to do, and he was describing to us what was on his screen. And we were sitting there thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about with what you're saying, and then realized he had bought a permit from a different installation.
Sure.
So make sure you go to Camp Ripley iSportsman, get on there, read through the permits tab and the news and alerts tab on there. That'll give you all the upfront stuff that you need right away. The permits tab has a description of all the different permits we've got out there. So if you're a veteran, you'll have to submit to me some more validation of your service, and then you can get into the other hunts. Otherwise, the alerts and news tab right on the main page has all the different season dates on there, when they're opening and closing. And then just review that stuff. If you need to set up a new account, click the login register button on there, and that'll bring you right in to where you can register for your new account. It'll ask you for the usual information that you'd give to anybody. And then just allow 72 hours or so for me to get in there and approve your account. I've been getting some emails from hunters that they're saying, hey, I can't see any permits available right now. And yep, I haven't approved your account yet. Just give me a little bit of time, and then you'll be able to get in. Other than that, once your new account's set up, again, the maps and all the open and closed areas, they're not going to populate in there until the day that the hunt opens on September 15th at 12:01. I promise you'll be able to see that stuff. So just give it some time on that. And then, yeah, once you check in, just make sure once you show up to the gate at Camp Ripley, again, I know all the public archers out there that have been participating in the past, they go through, a lot of people call it the main gate to those people, but really it's our east gate.
Right.
It's the first gate you run into. You can go into either of the gates that are open. So just when you show up to those gates, just make sure you have a valid state ID and your permit. In-eye sportsman ready for those gate guards so they know why you're on the installation. Then just head down to range control, grab your vehicle pass, and you're good to hunt. I hope it's a really smooth and easy process. It seems straightforward. I know there's been a lot of questions over it, but we're really trying to make it a good experience for people coming out there.
In the future, I just want to ask this for a last question here. In the future, do you see that that time frame changing on when you can sign up to go and hunt, like a week out in advance or anything? Because I know that's one of the big concerns I've been hearing from people.
Well, I personally believe we may be able to do it, but it's difficult to forecast for the military training all the time.
Sure, that makes sense.
Though technically it is scheduled in there way in advance, we still want to be able to allow that flexibility of the military units that are going to be out there. So it's difficult for us to allow people to be down there safely and still allow the training to go on too. So I'm not the one to make that call. That's definitely the big boss at Ripley.
Sure.
He's got to be the one to sign off on that because it's just such a safety factor. We want to make sure people are safe out there. So I know it does restrict people. You can't pick a weekend a month in advance or anything like that. But from a safety perspective, it does make sense. And so I understand what the concern there. But
well, thanks for clearing that up, because that's, I mean, obviously us as hunters, we need to recognize that. You know, it's we got to understand that this is a training facility and our soldiers are here training, you know, to protect us and our country and whatnot. And they come first, and it's about safety and whatnot. So thanks for clearing that up, because I didn't know if that was just an app thing where, well, this is the way the app is set up. It's just 12:01. That's it. But to allow that flexibility, totally understand. Totally understand.
We are going to try and have it in there to at least, you won't be able to reserve spots, but you should, we're hoping to be able to show at least a couple days out in there so you can kind of have an idea of what's going to be available, but you won't be able to reserve a spot. You'll just be able to see it in there a couple days out is what we're hoping we can do.
Sure.
We're not sure if we'll be able to get to that point completely, but for now, you'll for sure be able to see the day of, and we're hoping to get it so you can forecast out just a couple days in there, because we do, even within the range control office, we put out a range bulletin a couple days in advance. So we're hoping to have enough certainty built in there where we're able to put that on the site. But we want to get through the growing pains here and, you know, make sure everybody's safe up front, and we'll keep assessing. I can assure you the people at camp, we're working on this. We're really trying to work out the kinks and make it as smooth and simple as possible. That was the commander's big thing when he made the decision to really run with this thing is, hey, I want a system that's smooth and convenient for people to use and gives us the ability to see who's where, and we know who's all out there, and we can do it safely. That's the biggest thing.
Now you can apply in groups too, right?
As of right now, we didn't do a group application for this year. Just because there's no lottery or anything like that. There's no cap on the number of permits that are being sold right now.
Sure.
If we get to a point where we're capping that number of permits and we're overselling the hunt, we will do group applications then so everybody can get in.
Sure.
We do that on some of our veterans hunting events. So those vets out there that are listening, if you're this has changed a little bit with this new setup too. It used to be only Minnesota Guard vets were able to get into some of our hunts, and it was much more restrictive from who could participate in those. Now, if you're a veteran of any status, you can get into any of our veterans events too. You'll just have to send us a copy of your military documentation, and I'll get you approved for that stuff. So that's been a big change. And I lost my train of thought.
Well, I think it's just I just want to say, in the end, me from an outsider, a hunter who talks to a lot of people about Ripley, I'm passionate about Ripley, and a lot of people I've talked to, you know, everybody says it was going downhill. It was going downhill. I applaud you guys for making change, and change isn't always easy. I'm sure you've heard a lot of interesting people tell you you're doing the wrong thing, but that's with anything. Anytime you change something, you're going to hear negative feedback. But I firmly believe in the end, you guys are doing the right thing by changing things up for the better of camp, for the better of the enjoyment of the archers out there. And, I'm happy to see some change here, and I applaud you guys for your efforts.
Yeah, I think it'll lead to really more true hunting to me.
Yep.
I know to me, going out there with 2,000 other people in the woods, it was really busy. I only participated in the hunt one time.
Okay.
But now with 150 people in the woods, it's more like true hunting to me. You're not going to have people pushing those deer around all over. I anticipate that our harvest rate is going to be, pretty in line with the whole rest of the state. If you look at the statewide average, year to year, it's around 20% harvest with archery hunting.
Yep.
So eventually here, I'm sure we'll be falling right in line with that or something really similar to it. So.
Good deal. If anyone has any questions or concerns, who do they contact, or what can they do to figure that information out?
You can Google my name easily enough, Jake Kitzmann, Natural Resource Manager out there. I'll pop up on all sorts of things with camp. But if there's a few different spots, if you Google Camp Ripley Archery, our morale, welfare, and recreation site will pop up, and there's information on there. Otherwise, right on the Camp Ripley iSportsman page, there's contact information on there. There's a iSportsman email box that's set up specifically for questions for iSportsman. So if you could try and use that, I can't rattle that big old long thing off the top of my head, but it's a big gnarly email address. It's plastered all over the iSportsman page. Just copy and paste that. It's not a hyperlink. So just copy and paste that into your email. You can send me questions. I can almost assure you it'll be me answering them. So just give me some time and I'll get back to you. I promise. I'll answer the phone calls as they come in. The phone number that's on there is to our public affairs office. But I've been getting a lot of those messages forwarded to me as well. So if you've got questions, feel free to reach out. If you have concerns, if you don't understand something on iSportsman, I'm here to try and help. I'll try and sort those snafus out as we go through them. And feel free to reach out. There's information all over on the DNR's page. Also, if you look at the Camp Ripley archery hunt page still on the DNR, it'll link you right to the iSportsman website. There is a glitch on there it says September 14th is the start date of our hunting season. I'm working to update that as we speak. It is September 15th that archery hunting starts.
It's a Sunday.
Yep, it's a Sunday. We had to set our permits up in advance on this, trying to roll this thing out fast. And we thought it was going to be the 15th because that was on their 5-year forecast. They had that on there. But then when the dates were officially released, it was the 14th that came out.
Sure.
So we are the 15th. Don't pay attention to that date on the DNR site as of yet. So 15th of September, 12:01 a.m., you'll be able to get in.
Well, I appreciate you coming over, Jake. It's always nice when you can actually hear from somebody what's going on rather than some Joe Schmo uptown at the local saloon telling you what's up. But no, with that, if you don't have anything else to add, we'll kind of shut her down and kind of go from there.
No, I think I'm good. I appreciate you inviting me out.
Good deal.
In the future, if we need to talk more about the hunt, I'm more than willing to come back.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Well, thanks, guys, for listening. Hopefully you guys got some information out of that, and it helps you this year with the Camp Ripley archery hunt. So with that, we're going to cut you guys loose. Thanks for listening. Well, thanks for tuning in this week, you guys. A lot of information in this podcast here, a lot of valuable information. And like Jake said, if you have any questions, make sure you reach out. Obviously, there's a lot of change going on this year at Ripley. But in my mind, like I said, I'm looking forward to the change and, things kind of turning around there. But, yeah, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. I want to reach out and make sure I thank my sponsors as well. We got Arctic Shield, J&R Outdoors, Skullcraft, Tacticam, Fourth Arrow Camera Arms, and the Fish Guide. Once again, like I said, I appreciate you guys following along and listening to our podcast. Make sure you guys give us a like and subscribe on all of our social media platforms. And, don't be afraid to give this podcast a 5-star rating as well. We appreciate everything you guys do. And until next time, we'll catch you later.